If you believe within your heart, you'll know that no one can change.
Lena Horne was an icon, a trailblazer who shattered racial barriers to become a Hollywood legend. But the fame that made her a symbol for millions came at a devastating personal cost paid not just by her, but by the two children who were largely missing from her public story. While their mother fought for a place in the spotlight, they faced a private struggle with abandonment, tragedy, and the battle for their own identity. So, whatever happened to Lena Horne's two children? Lena Horne's story doesn't begin in the glittering halls of Hollywood. It starts with a deep, echoing instability, long before the bright lights and the fight for representation ever began. She was born on June 30, 1917, in Brooklyn, New York. Her father, Teddy Horne, was a man of contradictions, a banker who also ran in the high-stakes world of professional gambling. It's a telling detail that when Lena was born, Teddy wasn't. At the hospital, he was supposedly out gambling to cover the medical bills. For Lena, it was the first of many signs that her father was a man chasing his own interests, a man who would remain a fleeting, almost mythical figure in her life. Her parents' marriage was short-lived, and they split when Lena was only 3. First, her father vanished from her life. Not long after, her mother, Edna Scottron, an aspiring actress, also left, more captivated by the allure of the stage than the duties of motherhood. With both parents gone, young Lena was left with her formidable paternal grandparents, Cora and Edwin Horne. Cora Calhoun Horne was a force of nature in her own right, a staunch suffragette and a committed civil rights activist deeply involved with the NAACP. It was Cora who instilled in Lena a sense of duty and a steely resolve against injustice, shaping her worldview from childhood. But even with her grandmother's strong presence, Lena's childhood was a puzzle of displacement. Around age 5, she was sent to live in Georgia. For years, she was shuttled between relatives and family friends, a pattern of rootlessness that would haunt generations to come. Her mother would reappear periodically, but as Lena's daughter, Gail, would later reveal, it was often to spite her former mother-in-law, not out of maternal affection. The relationship between Lena and her own mother was never warm. It was strained by a palpable sense of disappointment. Lena always felt that her mother had wanted a son, not a daughter. By the time she was a teenager, Lena had learned a brutal life lesson. The people who are supposed to be your anchors are often the ones who set you adrift. This foundation of abandonment, this deep-seated understanding that dependability was a luxury she couldn't afford, became the bedrock upon which she built her life, her career, and her own complicated, fractured family. It was a cycle of pain that had begun long before she ever stepped onto a stage, and one that would tragically repeat itself. Before Lena Horne was a legend, she was a survivor. She was a young woman thrust into the world with her voice, her looks, and the fierce pride she'd inherited from her grandmother. The Great Depression had the country in its grip, and at just 16, Lena dropped out of school and took a job that would change her life. She became a chorus girl at the famed Cotton Club in Harlem. It was a world of glamour and danger, a place where black performers entertained exclusively white audiences. Perfect snapshot of the very racial hierarchy Lena would spend her life fighting. She began to hone her craft in this crucible of performance and prejudice. After a Broadway debut, she joined the Noble Sissel Society Orchestra and then made a groundbreaking move, becoming a singer for the Charlie Barnet Orchestra, one of the first white swing bands to feature a black vocalist. The opportunity was huge, but so was the isolation. A star on stage, she was an outcast off it. Racial prejudice meant she couldn't stay in the same hotels or eat in the same restaurants as her white bandmate. It was a stark, daily reminder of her otherness, a wound that never quite healed. During this tumultuous time, at 19, she made a decision that seemed to promise stability. She married Louis Jordan Jones, a political operative from Pittsburgh. On the surface, it was a chance to build the family life she never had. The reality, however, was far from the dream. Jones struggled to keep a steady job, and the pressure of being married to a rising star began to eat away at him. The relationship soured, becoming verbally abusive. Less than a month in, Lena was filled with regret, but by then, she was pregnant. With their first child, Gail, born in December 1937, leaving felt impossible. The marriage limped along, and a son, Edwin, followed in 1940, but the foundation was broken. Jones grew resentful, while Lena felt the pull of her career, a world where she was celebrated, even if conditionally. By 1940, they had separated, and the divorce was finalized in 1944. The end of her marriage was more than a personal failure. It was a turning point. Now a single mother to 2 young children, she faced the central conflict of her life, the immense gravitational pull of her destiny as a performer versus the grounding, often sacrificed, role of a mother. Hollywood came calling. MGM offered her a contract, seeing a unique, marketable beauty, but it was a gilded cage. When she first signed, the studio suggested she play a maid, the stereotypical role given to nearly all black actresses. But Lena, armed with advice from her father and the great Paul Robeson, refused. It was an act of defiance that set the tone for her career. She would not be diminished. This refusal came at a cost. MGM created a unique niche for her. She would appear in lavish musical numbers, often singing a standalone song, looking impossibly glamorous. These scenes were designed so they could be easily cut from films shown in the segregated American South, where audiences wouldn't tolerate a black woman portrayed with such elegance. She was a star, but a segregated one. She had only 2 speaking roles during her entire time at MGM. The pressure was immense. White Hollywood wanted an exotic, non-threatening beauty. Some in the black community accused her of trying to pass or of not being black enough, a painful irony for a woman fighting for representation on the world's biggest stage. She was caught in an impossible bind. In 1947, she married Lenny Hayton, a white Jewish man who was one of MGM's top musical directors. They married in Paris and kept it a secret for 3 years, knowing the firestorm an interracial marriage would ignite back home. They shared a deep love, but they also separated in the early 1960s, though they never divorced, remaining married until his death. This was the backdrop of her children's lives. Their mother was a warrior, fighting monumental battles on a public stage, but the energy and sheer force of will required to be Lena Horne, the icon, left precious little for Lena Horne, the mother. Her fight for a place in the world came at the direct cost of her place at home, leaving her 2 children to grow up in the long, lonely shadow of her fame. While Lena Horne was becoming a household name, her 2 children, Gail and Edwin Jones, were living a life almost entirely removed from her public persona. They were the silent footnotes to her spectacular story, their childhood defined not by their mother's spotlight, but by the shadows it cast. Gail Jones was born in December 1937. Just as her mother was starting her climb to stardom, her brother, Edwin, arrived in 1940, the same year their parents separated. The divorce in 1944 fractured the family unit, sending shockwaves through the rest of their lives. After the split, the children were caught in the currents of their parents' separate worlds. Lena's career was all-consuming. Their father, Louis Jones, was a more peripheral figure, and the custody arrangement that emerged was a painful one. Edwin was raised primarily by his father, while Gail stayed with their mother. This separation of siblings created a rift not just between the children and their parents, but between each other, setting them on starkly different paths from a very young age. This was a heartbreaking echo of Lena's own upbringing. Having been shuttled between relatives herself, she was now participating in a replication of that same trauma. The children were often left in the care of others, experiencing the same sense of displacement that had defined her youth. Gail eventually attended a Quaker boarding school, a decision that provided structure but also reinforced the distance from her mother's chaotic, glamorous world. To the children, their mother was a distant, almost mythical figure. They knew she was famous, of course, but it was an abstract concept of life happening on movie screens and in magazines that didn't seem to include them day to day. The central, painful question of their childhood was one of belonging. While their mother fought for a place in white America, they were fighting for a place in their own family. The contrast between her public image and their private reality was staggering. The world saw Lena Horne as the epitome of strength. But, behind the scenes, her children were navigating a landscape of emotional absence. The weight of her career, compounded by the pressures of being a black trailblazer and part of a controversial marriage, created a barrier between her and her children that was, for many years, insurmountable. They were the children in the shadows, their needs and struggles obscured by the blinding light of their mother's stardom. Of Lena Horne's 2 children, the story of her son Edwin is the most shrouded in sorrow. His life was a brief, tragic narrative played out almost entirely off stage, a somber counterpoint to his mother's dazzling triumphs. Known as Teddy, he bore not only his grandfather's name but also the heavy B. Unstable, continuing the cycle of disruption he had inherited. The ultimate tragedy struck in 1970. At just 30 years old, Edwin Teddy Jones died from kidney disease. His death was a cataclysm. For Lena, the news was a devastating blow, a convergence of all her private griefs and regrets. The child she had been separated from, the son whose life was a quiet testament to her own personal costs, was gone. But tragedy rarely comes alone. The year 1970 was an abyss of loss for Lena Horne. Just months after burying her son, she lost her own father, Teddy Horne, the following year. In 1971, her husband of over 2 decades, Lenny Hayton, died suddenly from a heart attack. In the span of about a year, the 3 most significant men in her life were gone. The weight of this triple loss was unbearable. Lena, the indomitable survivor who had stood up to studio heads and racists, finally broke. She retreated completely from the public eye, consumed by a grief so profound it silenced her. She later told Ebony magazine, "At first, of course, I thought that this is it. This is the end of me." The loss of her son, in particular, was a wound from which she never fully recovered. It was the materialization of a lifetime of distance, a final, irreversible separation. Edwin Jones's short, troubled life represents the most devastating cost of Lena Horne's fame. While Edwin's story is one of tragic brevity, the life of his sister, Gail, is a powerful narrative of resilience, intellect, and the drive to reclaim her family's story. Born Gail Horne Jones, she navigated the same turbulent waters of her parents' fame and separation, but emerged with a clear and potent voice. Where her brother's life was marked by what was lost, hers became defined by what could be built from the fragments of a complicated past. Gail's childhood, like her brother's, was characterized by distance from her mother. Raised Catholic and educated at a Quaker boarding school and later Radcliffe College, where she graduated in 1959, her upbringing was a world away from the Hollywood hustle. This separation, while painful, may have given her a crucial space to develop her own identity. After college, she pursued a career in journalism, working for Life magazine and interning at Marie Claire in Paris, honing the skills that would make her family's most important historian. In 1963, Gail married the acclaimed film director Sidney Lumet. This union brought her into the heart of a different kind of Hollywood, one of auteurs and serious cinema. The marriage lasted until 1978 and produced 2 daughters, Amy and Jenny Lumet. Her daughter Jenny would become a successful screenwriter, known for films like Rachel Getting Married, continuing the family's creative lineage. Through her marriage and career, Gail established herself as a figure of substance, connected to, but not defined by, her famous mother. The pivotal moment came in 1986 with her seminal book, The Hornes, An American Family. This was no mere celebrity memoir. Drawing from a trunk of family papers, Gail crafted a sweeping historical account, tracing 6 generations of her family. The book was a revelation. It shed light on the little-known world of the black bourgeoisie, educated, politically active families, like the Hornes, who were leaders in their communities long before Lena was a star. With graceful, objective prose, Gail told a vital American story. She wrote of her great-grandparents and their work as activists. She contextualized her mother's life, not as an isolated phenomenon, but as the culmination of generations of struggle and ambition. For the first time, the public saw the private pain behind the public perfection. She spoke of her mother's lonely childhood, her battles with racism, and the immense sacrifices made for her career. In giving an honest account of her family, she also gave voice to her own experience. The Hornes became a critical success and was adapted into an American Masters documentary on PBS, which Gail narrated. She went on to write other significant works, including American Patriots, the story of blacks in the military from the Revolution to Desert Storm, which won the prestigious Robert F. Kennedy Book Award. Gail Lumet Buckley managed a delicate balance. She was honest about the pain and separation that marked her family's history without succumbing to bitterness. She framed her family's story as a uniquely American one, a testament to both the nation's promise and its prejudices. She provided the why behind her mother's choices, explaining the pressures that shaped Lena's path with deep empathy. Gail's life was one of turning shadows into substance. She took the legacy she was born into and gave it depth, context, and historical weight. Sadly, Gail Lamette Buckley passed away on July 18, 2024, at the age of 86, leaving behind her own legacy of profound truth-telling. She not only answered what happened to Lena Horne's children, but also told the world who the Hornes truly were, an American family. The stories behind the legends are often the most powerful. If you agree and want to help us uncover more of them, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue to bring these important, often overlooked, histories to light. The life of Lena Horne was a portrait of breathtaking duality. She was a symbol of black elegance in an era of vicious segregation, a trailblazer who was both celebrated and confined. But as the divergent paths of her two children reveal, her public triumphs were mirrored by private heartbreaks, and her iconic fame cast a long, complicated shadow over the people she loved most. Her story, and that of her children, is a profound and cautionary tale about the price of being a pioneer. The relentless fight against a racist industry and the pressure to be a symbol demanded a level of focus and sacrifice that was all-consuming. The child of absentee parents became an absentee parent herself, not from a lack of love, but because her life's work left little room for anything else. Edwin Teddy Jones paid the highest price. His life was a quiet tragedy of abandonment and emotional turmoil. His premature death, at age 30, the devastating climax of a life spent grappling with the consequences of his mother's fame. In stark contrast, Gail Lamette Buckley's life became a testament to resilience. She transformed the complexities of her upbringing into a source of strength. By becoming her family's historian, she didn't just tell her mother's story, she reclaimed it, contextualized it, and gave voice to the generations of Hornes who came before. Remarkably, out of the ashes of her profound grief in the early 1970s, Lena Horne herself staged one of the most incredible comebacks in entertainment history. The pain of losing her son, her father, and her husband all at once seemed to unlock something within her. As she told Ebony, professionally, "The pain really opened me up to my audience." Her one-woman show, Lena Horne, The Lady and Her Music, was the culmination of this transformation, earning her a special Tony Award in 1982. For the first time, she wasn't just a singer in a movie. She was telling her own story, unfiltered and on her own terms. In the end, the story of Lena Horne and her children is a complex tapestry of sacrifice, sorrow, and survival. It reminds us that behind every icon is a human being, and behind every triumph, there is often a hidden cost. Lena Horne's legacy isn't just in the barriers she broke, but in the complicated, poignant, and deeply human story of her family, a story of a son who was lost to the struggle and a daughter who lived to tell it all.